Good afternoon, everyone. We are starting the final part of our 3-day conference, Experiencing the Museum. This year, its main subject is Web and Digital Technologies as Accessibility Tool for Museums. And we'd like to start today's program with a recap of what we have covered in the first 2 days. In the day one, we were talking about the future, about what can be awaiting us in the future and how we can combine technological advances and the idea of enhancing the human being with the notion of diversity. Yesterday, we were mainly talking about making museums more accessible, and today we are going to consider global and international cases, not just in culture, but in general. The most interesting cases of the use of assistive technology to make the world more accessible for people with various experiences. And before we start talking about specific cases, we're going to hear a lecture by Patrice Wheeler, who is an assistive technology specialist, and she will be talking about assistive technology in general. It will be an introduction for the whole day's agenda. Thank you, and over to you, Patrice.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And my name is Patrice Wheeler. I am an assistive technology specialist at California State University, Northridge. And I have been a specialist for about 20 plus years at both the community college and higher education. I have a degree in education with an emphasis in special education, math, and science. And I also have some certifications in assistive technology from the university and from the Rehab Engineers of North America. So the question I get is, how did that get me into assistive technology? Well, it began with a Braille printer. I'd had a student in my first job teaching at community college math, and he was blind. And the second term, the director of disability services said, "Hey, you're Patrice. I hear you know about technology. What do you know about a Braille printer?" Well, I seemed to know something. And the next term, I was their assistive technology specialist. So you never know when you're going to be taking on that role. So for today, I will be the only mic open. We will have a Q&A at the end. So be sure to enter, if you're on Zoom, enter into Zoom chat any of your questions. And I will be providing a resources list of many of the topics I'm talking about, as well as the technology after the lecture. So our agenda today will be, what is assistive technology, often called AT for short? Why is it important? Types of assistive technology, and persons with disabilities. And a little bit about, since we're in the setting of museums and public spaces, what might that look like? And then time for our Q&A. So how are we going to be able to do that in 30 minutes? Well, I take what I call a bird's eye view, meaning we'll take a look at these topics briefly, but you should have enough information from this lecture as well as my resources list to be able to dive down and stop and take a little bit deeper look, and in particular with the information you get from the other presenters. So first, defining what is assistive technology. Well, the Tech Act in the United States from 1988, which came after the Americans with Disabilities Act, did define that, as laws often do. And it's anything. It could be off the shelf. It could be something that's made customized, but it's any system or product that is used to increase and improve the functional capabilities of people with disabilities. Similarly, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities with the United Nations, as early as 2006, had a definition, and it included this idea of persons with disabilities living independently and participating fully in all aspects of life. And this is very important. And it goes on to talk about technologies, systems, public facilities. So persons with disabilities are there from the very beginning. And that's an important focus when we're talking about technology, is to put the person first. So when I ask the question, why is assistive technology important? Some people think that that's an unusual question to ask, is the why. But I think it's a people first, technology second. And that's why I like to do what I call start with why. So this diagram is from a gentleman named Simon Sinek back in 2009, he did this presentation called Start with Why, and he's written many books on it. And the diagram is 3 circles with why at the center, how in the middle, and then what. And instead of moving from what the technology is and how it works, we want to start with the why. Why this technology, and why is it important to the person who might want to use it or need it? So why is always our sense of purpose. It's what motivates and inspires us. And if we start with why, we come up with better solutions and better interactions. The how are the actions we're going to take? What are we going to do? What are actions? And then the what is everything tangible that can be experienced. So these are the 3 things that we want to focus on when we're talking about people with disabilities and technology. So my why, in brief, is that I want to connect individuals to the right tool for their success. And my setting is most of the time in higher education. I also believe in today, particularly in the times that we're in, that technology skills are essential. This statistic that says only 28% of persons with disabilities who have degrees in higher degrees in education and beyond are employed in the United States. This is a very similar statistic that we're seeing across the United States, and you'll probably hear a lot more about this later on today. And my goal as an assistive technology professional is actually defined by some of the readings and books that I've gone through, and that we are there to meet the specific needs of an individual that is consistent with their skills and allows them to accomplish their unique tasks. So what I'd like you to think about as we move forward today is your why for attending this lecture, this session. And maybe, for example, why is this topic interesting or important to you? All right, enough about that. Let's now start talking about some tech. I have some categories of assistive technology to kind of get us started. These are by no means inclusive of all of them, and what I want to sort of share them with you. So first, we have things for mobility, like wheelchairs. Then we have calendars and planners. These often help people keep organized and help with memory. AAC, or Augmentative Alternative Communication, and these devices, okay? Switches are often used for mobility as well as communication. FM systems, video relay, and captioning we'll take a little bit deeper look at. These are all services that help people that are deaf and hard of hearing. Text-to-speech and speech-to-text software and apps. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. Screen readers and magnifiers and Braille. These are for individuals that are blind or low vision, and they're a little bit different than things like text-to-speech. Magnification helps users with all kinds of vision challenges. Built-in access. This is probably one of the biggest and most well-used aspects of assistive technology. Virtually anything we own, as far as a laptop, desktop, tablet, or phone, has built-in accessibility to it. And this is key for everyone because it means they're bringing their access with them. And apps, oh my, we all know how many apps are out there. There are too many to count. So because that's a lot of information and a long list, I like to break it down into something very simple, what I call the Tech Continuum. So when you're thinking about technology, think about it in terms of high tech, low tech, and no tech. So smartphones and apps and wearables, things like hearing aids and communication devices, these are high tech. They can often seem complex, they're very personal, and they change over time, they change quickly. Low tech are things like kiosks, laptops, tablets, handheld magnifiers. These are a little bit less complex, and maybe we don't update them or change them as often, and they're a little more widely used by just about everybody. No tech is very important. This is the category where I put personal assistance, because sometimes a person assisting someone is the most important piece of assistive technology, such as reading assigned to a guest or helping someone find their way. Manual wheelchairs, canes, paper, and pencil. These are things that don't require electricity, batteries, or software. So this high tech, low tech, and no tech is a great way to think about technology. I'm going to give you some examples out of some of these categories. So the first category is mobility. We have a couple of walkers displayed. One has wheels, one looks very simple. There's a manual wheelchair, a scooter, and a cane. So these are all varying degrees of complexity. But what's important about these devices is they're very personal to the user, and the user is usually the expert. Now, a little bit of scooter and wheelchair etiquette is that if you're going to have a conversation for longer than 5 minutes, it's recommended that you find a chair, sit down or find a way to get to eye level with that person. It saves both of you some neck strain and it helps build rapport. Okay, this is a big category that most people are not familiar with. Augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. These can be devices, again, they're very personal devices, and they're used for communication, any kind of communication. Some of them are very specific and to a person's wheelchair or mobility device, and they require a great deal of electronics. Others can be as simple as a board, a picture board, or a symbol board. It can also be sign language. It can also be considered an assistive technology device for augmentative communication. The next category is assisted listening. So we're going to look at a video in a minute on what a hearing loop is. Hearing loops are technology that is designed to work with an individual's hearing aid or cochlear implant and allows them to hear what's going on in a very noisy environment. Now, this video will not have closed captions, and it's that way, designed that way so that you can hear the difference between someone trying to talk to an individual in a noisy environment with and without what's called a hearing loop. You'll also see a picture on the screen of a sign that usually indicates to the user, to the individual, that there is a hearing loop or a T-loop available. Let's take a listen. Hearing loops, a demonstration of how hearing loops provide clear sound.
Live recording at the subway booth at 66th Street, Lincoln Center, asking for directions.
Yes, take the 1 train to 14th Street. You have to get the L train to Bedford. That's heading northward. Excuse me?
The exact same encounter as heard over the loop system installed at the subway booth at 66th Street, Lincoln Center.
Take the 1 train to 14th Street. Get off and get the L train to Bedford. That's heading towards Brooklyn. Yes. Excuse me?
So the video goes on to talk about why he made the video the way he did and not using the overdubbing and captions, because you wanted to really see what was the true experience. Now, what if someone doesn't have a hearing aid or a cochlear implant? Well, that's when FM systems come in. And FM systems, as you can see by the diagram, have a receiver and a transmitter. So the individual who's hard of hearing or deaf would use the receiver with usually a headset or earbud so that they can hear what's going on in a large auditorium or a noisy environment. Another aspect of providing services for deaf or hard of hearing is video relay. So you see a picture of an individual talking to someone, looks like they're signing, and there's a picture of someone on a computer screen in between them. So video relay is used when you're making a phone call to someone who is hearing and you are deaf. And sometimes you might see this symbol that says that video relay is available. It's a symbol with 2 figures in the back and hands come together in the front in the idea of sign language. So we're going to take a quick look at what video relay could be like in an actual real life setting.
I can always tell when Charlotte's waiting for a boy to call. Huh? So it's kind of weird when she gets the call, but hangs up. She says it wasn't Paul. It was some kind of operator saying something about video relay service. I ask if Paul is deaf, hard of hearing, or may have a speech disability. I was so right. I let her know that video relay service is how someone who uses sign language phones someone who doesn't. It was him! Like a good brother, I come to the rescue. I tell the operator, a sign language interpreter, to let Paul know Charlotte would love to go to the dance with him.
Oh, I have nothing to wear.
Ah, sisters.
So that was a great demonstration of what happens with a video relay call. Now, you can see that this is sponsored by the Canadian government. That's quite common in many countries that the government's going to sponsor this free service. The thing to know is that if you ever do get a video relay call, if you don't hang up like the young woman did right away, they will actually ask you if you've ever had this kind of call, which I've had in my job many times, and they'll walk you through it. If you don't know what a video relay call is, they'll quickly explain to you how the call is going to go and how you can communicate with the person who's deaf and hard of hearing. So this allows the individual to make a phone call at any time and speak to someone without having to secure an interpreter to bring with them into the physical space. Okay, information processing. This is a huge category. So I picked just 2 ideas out of this one. The first one is this icon for text to speech. It's a page with a speaker coming out of it. So what happens is the user selects the text and uses their technology to hear the text read aloud. This is really helpful for people that have a difficult time processing information by simply just reading it. Conversely, this icon is a smartphone with a microphone, and this is what we call speech recognition. If you've ever dictated a text on your phone, you've used this assistive technology. This technology is helpful not only for people that have difficulty typing, but also difficulty expressing their ideas with just typing them out. They need to voice them out. Now, this technology, this is where we start to talk about technology that's really built in to your devices again. So you can actually download software. And one of those examples of downloaded software that complements what's built into technology is called Read and Write. This is technology that has both text to speech and speech recognition in it. And so this is something that a person could actually purchase. Vision related. This is a big category again. So we have a computer screen, and this is the symbol in the computer screen for accessibility features and preferences in technology with what looks like sound coming out of it. Screen readers are used by individuals that are blind or low vision so that they can hear everything that's going on the screen, the content and how they're navigating. This is also built into technology, but you can purchase it as well. This is the symbol for JAWS, software for Windows, which is a screen reader. But there's also something called NVDA, which is completely free to all screen reader users who have their own Windows machine. Another part that helps with vision is magnification. So we see a picture of a computer screen with a magnifying glass highlighting someone in a wheelchair. Magnification or zoom settings are again built into technology, and they help a person simplify and be able to see what's going on their screen with various settings. You can also purchase different types of technology to install, and Zoom Text is one of those. To round out this category, I want to show you what is called a refreshable Braille display. This is a keyboard that you can hook up to your computer. So you see a computer screen, and in the bubble, instead of text, you see a Braille cell. So what happens with the refreshable Braille keyboard is that in conjunction with your screen reader, as the screen reader is speaking, the Braille shows up along the bottom here, and the individual can then use their skills to read the Braille. And this provides a multisensory experience and really helps the person get the information much more clearly and quickly. I talked a little bit about Windows. Well, in the Apple environment, as with Windows, you have built-in assistive technology. So this icon is, again, the symbol for Apple's accessibility settings, and they have something called VoiceOver. So with the things we're talking about, built-in technology is very important. So with built-in access, it's usually across we call cross-platform and cross-device. We have Apple, Android, and Windows, and there are many other potential operating systems, but these are the 3 main ones. And there's usually an icon associated with this. Sometimes in Windows, you'll see a circle that's with arrows. It looks somewhat like a wheelchair. So if you're not quite sure and all you see is a symbol, you can be pretty sure that these are the accessibility settings. In Android, it's a blue pentagon with a figure in front of it. And with iPads and iPhones and Apple products, it's actually a blue circle with a figure in the middle. And remember, these are in the settings and preferences in just about every device and piece of technology. So I want to take a look at what you can do with your iPhone. I picked one idea here about how to set up an iPhone that you can use Magnifier if, say, you're having difficulty seeing something.
Magnifier uses your iPhone camera to magnify anything you point it at. Here's how to use it to zoom in and illuminate documents, menus, signs, and more. To enable Magnifier, go to Settings. Then tap General and Accessibility. Then tap Magnifier and toggle the switch on. This adds Magnifier as an accessibility shortcut, so you can easily turn this feature on whenever you need it. Now just move your phone over the object you want to magnify, and open Magnifier from any screen by triple-clicking the side button on your iPhone 10 or later, or by triple-clicking the Home button on earlier models. You can also customize Control Center to include Magnifier. Check the link in the description to learn more. Now you can zoom in or out by adjusting the slider, or dragging your finger up and down on the screen. If you need to adjust the focus, just tap the screen. If you're in a dimly lit environment, you can add more light by turning the flashlight on. If you want to freeze the frame, you can tap the Freeze Frame button at the bottom of the screen. This lets you explore and adjust this image further without having to hold your iPhone steady over the text you're trying to read. If you want to save this image to your camera roll, touch and hold the screen.
Sorry about that. All right, so we're going to have that pause.
Light on. If you want to freeze the frame, you can tap the Freeze Frame button at the bottom of the screen. This lets you explore and adjust this image further without having to hold your iPhone steady over the text you're trying to read. If you want to save this image to your camera roll, touch and hold the screen. Then tap Save Image. When you're ready to unfreeze the frame, just tap the screen to bring the magnifier menu back up. Then tap the Freeze Frame button again. Here, just swipe up from the bottom edge of the screen to exit. And it's only a triple click away the next time you need it. For more helpful iPhone tips, subscribe to the Apple Support channel, or click another video to keep watching.
So this is a great example of how the technology that you own has accessibility built in, and there are great videos from the people that make that technology. You also notice that he talked a little bit about having an older iPhone. So your technology does not have to be brand new in order for you to be able to use the access. Okay, so if we're talking about built-in, we're also going to talk about mobile apps. So we talked a little bit about people that are deaf and hard of hearing. So two apps that I chose to highlight are both called Live Transcribe, one for iOS or Apple, and one called Live Transcribe for Android. And these are really terrific because what they do is they provide access on the fly immediately to someone who is deaf or hard of hearing with just the use of their smartphone. And it's very easy to use. Each one of them has either 50 or 70 plus languages. So what if you're somewhere and you need to communicate with someone who's deaf or hard of hearing, but you don't have an interpreter immediately available, or the interpreter hasn't shown up? If the person has this on their device, then you can at least start the conversation and begin to do whatever the task is that that person wants to do, whether they're asking for information or just want to have a conversation or order a cup of coffee. Because there are so many apps, I usually recommend that people do a couple of different things. So for iOS or Apple, there's a website called App Advice. And this gives you a great quick review over many, many different kinds of apps. It organizes them, categorizes them. It's a little bit more user-friendly than the app stores. And there's a similar link that I'll provide in resources for Android. So let's take a look at Live Transcribe for Androids. You can see it in action.
Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I'm doing good. What can I get you today?
I would like tea.
So this app automatically transcribes the spoken words for people with hearing loss.
Like Transcribe is an application that runs in Android. It provides transcription of speech in real time.
And Dimitri is a research scientist at Google, and he lost his hearing at the age of 1.
Its recognition accuracy finally became so good that I could fulfill my dream for whole life, to use speech recognition to communicate with people.
To build the tool, Google partnered with Gallaudet University, a leading university for deaf and hard of hearing people. Live Transcribe is available in 70 languages and dialects. And although it says it comes pre-installed, it's actually available on almost all devices now. So there you saw a software engineer partnering with other individuals to produce something that he himself is going to be able to use, as well as benefit other people. So now that we've talked about technology, let's come back to persons with disabilities, because I told you I like to have a person first, technology second approach. These icons I'm going to show you just help to describe maybe some different kinds of disabilities. And maybe you've seen them: a person with a cane, an ear with some circles on the outside of it, a person in front of a book with question marks above their head. Maybe they don't understand something. An eye with a line through it. Another person with a cane kind of holding their back as they walk. An ear with a line through it. This is similar to what we saw with the T loops on the FM systems. Two fingers come together with the forefinger and thumb pinched kind of together. This often can mean that they're sign language interpreting. A figure in a wheelchair. This one is most familiar to a lot of us. This one is a person with the side view in their brain displayed. And then this is a Braille cell. So while these icons or symbols might tell us if there's a software or a service available, and they might give us a clue as to what's going on with the person with a disability, they don't really tell the whole story. We really need to have a conversation. So I've talked about technology. We've talked about types of disabilities. So I want to take what I call a practical application approach. So what can you do when you're working with someone who might need your assistance? So I like to ask and engage a person in conversation. And I find that if you ask them, what are they trying to accomplish? So here we see, so it looks like a task list and a timer, coupled with the challenge that they may be having. Here we have someone crossing over a large chasm. So what are they trying to accomplish? What's getting in their way? And I find people are very willing to do this, whether it's disability related or not. They give you valuable information. But also, I have a picture of a brain that looks like he's being very strong. I want you to also observe the person's abilities. Just because they're asking for assistance and may need extra technology does not mean there's nothing that they can do. It may be something very specific that they're asking you for. And also observe what technology do they have. This goes back to our idea of cross-platform and cross-device. Is it a laptop? Is it a desktop? They bring their tablet with them, their smartphone. Maybe it was one of those AAC devices. Is it Apple? Is it Android? Is it Windows? Is it something else? Just observe that, so it might give you some clues as to how you could assist that person. Together with this information, you can come up with ideas and collaborate with that individual to get them, as we say, from point A to point B and find a solution. Keeping in mind that technology can always be talked in as high tech, low tech, and no tech, and does not have to be complicated or difficult to use. So we've got the technology, we've got the people with the disabilities, we've talked a little bit about how to build rapport, maybe some practical steps about how to approach what they need, what would be helpful to them, all right? So going a little bit beyond that, what could be some next steps you could do in the environment you're either working in or in your community? Number one, always ask, is it accessible as you're developing new programs, events, and materials with your team? Consider how various technologies can be a solution, providing access and a better experience for all guests or individuals. Think about FM systems. Even if someone isn't completely deaf or has a significant hearing loss, an FM system can really help them listen to a speaker in a large auditorium. Also, add what I call design mindset to your planning stations. Design mindset is like brainstorming with a little more focus while still considering all possible solutions. And remember, technology for access does not have to be complex or expensive. If you've ever heard of this, which is called a QR code, it's a black and white square. QR codes are alive and well. I checked and I left you a link in my resources. It's a very simple way to provide a link to information on your website or your materials for someone who may not be able to use them in the current format. So that's my lecture for today. I hope you're able to get an overview of technology, persons with disabilities, and be able to use those in your environment. So we have a little bit of time left if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Patrice. We don't have any questions on YouTube. But I have a question about the term systematic technologies or system technologies or assisting technologies. Now we see this typology that there are assisting technologies and there are other technologies. But at the same time, all technologies that are designed now are designed to make people's life easier, more comfortable, and so on and so forth. So the question is, should we really divide all technologies into assisting technologies and all other technologies?
That is one of my very favorite questions. And I've been thinking a long time since I've been doing this a long time that the word assistive technology is becoming a bit outdated, isn't it? I've talked about all the built-in technologies and all the great apps that many of us might want to use. So what we call it, especially in our learning environment at the university, is we call it technology to enhance learning, technology to enhance living. It also leads to this idea of universal design. So universal design is if it helps one person, it helps everyone. And how can we really bring this and be very, very inclusive? And that's where I see the technology going. And this is why I like the idea of cross-platform, cross-device, because of the work I do, my job is to work whatever the student brings me, whether they're bringing me their tablet, their laptop. Sometimes we're Zooming and looking at desktops, whatever the operating system is, the age of the device. They're bringing me something that they want to use more effectively. Sometimes it's even a paper planner. How can they be more effective in the tasks that they're doing to accomplish things to get to their goals? Because that's really what's key in the area that I work in, is getting people further to their goals so that they can accomplish what they want to do with their lives. So I love that question. I think it's excellent. And I think it really speaks to what you're talking about at your conference this week.
Thank you very much, Patrice. Thank you very much for answering the question so fully. I completely agree with you. And we still don't have any more questions in the chat. I think or on YouTube, if there are any more questions coming up, if that's okay with you, we will forward you these questions. Also, we received a list of useful links from you. We will share them with all those interested. Thank you very much. And in 5 minutes, we're going to begin the next talk. And for now, we will take a short break. Please stay with us.
Ну что ж, мы продолжаем. И хотелось бы сейчас сказать о том, что несмотря на то, что в течение конференции, в течение предыдущих 2 дней мы очень много говорили об инвалидности, все же инклюзия — это понятие более широкое. И инклюзия охватывает взаимодействие с людьми с различным опытом, и в том числе с людьми старшего возраста. Именно поэтому мы бы хотели рассказать о проекте High Story, который также можно говорить о History. И об этом проекте расскажет Гюнтер Райзингер, руководитель проекта в области диджитал-трансформации культурных предприятий в компании NUS Business Management. Мне кажется, это Этот проект, он
about
очень
this
важен,
project.
он
I think this
социальной
project
по
is
своей
really
направленности
important.
и позволяет
It is
превратить личную
socially oriented,
личную
and it
историю
helps
в
to turn
часть
a personal
всеобщей мировой
story
истории,
into part
и
of the
этот
global
проект
story, of the global
заставляет
narrative.
чувствовать
And this
себя
project
людям важными,
makes
нужными
people feel
и
important,
чувствовать
feel they're needed,
себя
feel that they matter,
частью этого
and they
мира.
feel part of this bigger
В общем,
world.
Гюнтер расскажет
So
побольше,
Günther
и мне
will talk
кажется,
more about this
музейные
project now, and I think
культурные
that
институции
cultural
смогут взять
institutions
на заметку этот
can
интересный
borrow a lot of
инструмент
ideas
по
from
взаимодействию
this
с людьми.
great tool
Спасибо.
for engaging people. Thank you very much. Günther, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm hearing the translation in the ear. Okay, so thank you very much for having invited me to this very interesting conference. And thanks for being interested in our project High Story, Make Your Story History. So as you can see already on the title, it's called High Story, which is an acronym for welcome story, so to say, make your story history. And what I will do within the next 30-40 minutes is to give you a very short overview over this rather large project. So first I will give you some project facts, then I will talk a little bit about the project goals, and then I will have some words also on the business model, because this is, at least in our opinion, also very important if we are talking about those projects. And then I will give you a rather rough overview of the status quo of the technical development. And at the end of my presentation, I will give you some insights in the backing paradigms. That means what is the theoretical background of this whole project, which is very important for us also to reflect this. So it's a project which is co-funded by the European Union, especially by the program AAL. This is Active Assisted Living Program from the European Union. And this program is targeting especially older adults. That means within this program, there are products developed which target especially older adults to get them more into the digital world, so to say. It's a collaborative project of 8 partners of 3 countries. That means we're having partners from Switzerland and from the Netherlands and from Austria. There are 3 partners in Austria. It's us, it's NUS. Then it's the Austrian Institute of Technology, and it's Studio Dankel. And there we have a mixture of business development and technical development and empirical research on the AIT side and user service-centered design side on Studio Dankel side. Then we have 2 partners from Switzerland. The one is Vicino Lucerne, which is a neighborhood help institution. And the second one is the iHome Lab, which is a part of the University of Lucerne, which is one of the technical partners within the project. And we have 3 partners in the Netherlands. One is the municipality of Zutphen, which is one of our user group partners. Then one partner is the National Foundation of the Elderly, which is the biggest institution dealing with older people in the Netherlands. And the third partner is IJsfontein in Amsterdam, which is a digital agency like NUS in Vienna, and which is also part of the business part and the development part. That's the framing of the whole project. So it's an ongoing collaborative project. We are working mostly because of the pandemic, virtual in the meantime. So we are doing all our meetings within Zoom, as this conference also is in Zoom. So as you can see here, it's a sort of nice community to work with. So the facts. It's a, as I said already, it's a rather large project which is running for 3 years. So it's still in progress. We began to work on it April 2019, and it will be finished in end of March next year. So we are in the last year now. So what you will see afterwards is, so to say, an insight in the ongoing work. Many things are already finished so far, and many things we are working on the details now. As I said, it's part of the call 2018 of the AAL program, which I'm sure many of you know, because this is a rather large program of the European Union. And yes, as I said, we at NUS Vienna, we do have the project coordination, the consortial lead, so to say. So we have the contact to the CMU in Brussels and do the whole reporting and the business developing together with the other partners. So, okay, what is High Story about? So I have some sentences here which are very short. So High Story will create a solution that lets people tell, share, and consume stories. So the whole project is about storytelling. It's about oral history, so to say, and it's about storytelling for older adults. So High Story aims to connect not only, but mainly older adults. That means in our context, 65 plus, through a shared experience. So this is very important for us because the aspect of bringing people together physically, this is one of the main goals, so to say, of this project. Also, we are dealing with the digital. I will explain this to you later. So High Story supports any kind of institution trying to prevent and ease social isolation of older adults. So this was part of the 2018 call, AAL call, to prevent and ease social isolation. So, and as you can imagine, because of the pandemic, this is a very, very important topic in the meantime, because many of older adults are getting more and more isolated because of this pandemic. Okay, for that, High Story creates, so to say, a whole ecosystem of analog and digital tools and services to let older adults tell, share, and consume personal stories, and this is very important for us, connect them through this shared experience of facilitated storytelling. So High Story helps to set up a storytelling event and a whole communication infrastructure for bringing older people together to share stories with each other. That's one point. And for this, we are developing a web platform. On the one hand, to share, to search, to annotate, to edit, and to compile those stories from older adults on different topics for very different purposes. For example, for museum exhibitions, for cultural institutions of any kind, city walks, school lessons, scientific approaches, healthcare, social care institutions, and so on. For this, High Story develops a mobile app for audio recording, consuming, and storing those personal stories. Okay, so this is a very, very rough overview of what the High Story project is generally aiming at. What is important within this project in general is that from the very beginning, we had a user-centered design approach. That means this is not a top-down development project. Instead of that, it's from the very beginning a bottom-up process concerning all levels of the project. So we did not say we are doing this and that and the target persons have to use it. We did it the other way around. We did some extensive requirement analysis with stakeholder interviews with older adults, with expert workshops and so on. Then we did some extensive evaluation. That means we had field trials before we even started in the technical development. We did some lab user studies. That means we simulated the whole process all before we began the digital development. Then we had some expert evaluation and so on and so on. On the other side, you can see it on the screen, we had some very intensive time on the service design with co-creation workshops where we included older adults in all 3 countries, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, and in Austria, working together with institutions like museums to get contact to the older adults and to evaluate the idea of what we will be doing before we get into the technical development of all that. We tested the user journeys, we tested the use cases and so on. And after that, we began to develop the technical development behind this. I will be back to you later concerning this whole mindset and the whole theoretical paradigm behind the project. So in the 3 countries, Austria, Switzerland, and Netherlands, we do have different focuses, so to say. In Austria, it's storytelling and museum, so to say. And the basis for this is a rather contemporary museological approach, so to say. So the museum as a place for coming together, a meeting place for people, so to say, not only a place for artifacts in a way. So, for example, museum curators collect personal and authentic stories for a planned exhibition. That's only one use case. Older adults are invited to tell, to listen to stories on a given topic, for example. In doing this, we collaborate very intensively with Wien Museum, which is a rather large museum in Vienna, which does have an initiative for storytelling already for the last 10 years. So people are meeting in the museum to tell their stories, and they will use the High Story product when it's ready for structurizing, for recording, for compiling, and for collecting all those stories, for example. In Switzerland, as I told you, in Lucerne, we do have a collaboration with a neighborhood assistance initiative called Vicino. So this neighborhood helps older inhabitants of the city of Lucerne to come together, and we will support them, or we are already supporting them to tell those stories, for example, of city history or personal histories, and to archive and to structurize all those stories within the context of oral history. And in the Netherlands, there is a strong focus on health and social care institutions, also not only, but also collaborating with cultural institutions, because one of our partners is the National Foundation of the Elderly, which has access to the whole group of older adults in the Netherlands. And the second partner is the municipality of Zutphen, I already mentioned it, where we do have access to company and city archive for using the whole storytelling procedure of high story. And which is very important, especially when we are talking about the use of those tools, so to say, of those products within the cultural field, within the museum field. It's getting more and more important to also talk about business, because as you all know, also the museums are more and more thinking about numbers on financials, museum KPI, and so on. So to guarantee also a long-time accessibility of this product High Story, we are doing some extensive research on the whole business case, the business value proposition, the canvas, and so on. So we are developing at the moment a very detailed licensing model for interested institutions who are willing to use this service in future. So we will provide tailored licensing models, exactly tailored to the needs of those institutions. For that, we do have a rather pitchy value proposition, so to say, to foster social inclusion of older adults by providing services and tools that stimulate storytelling to organization with an initiative to prevent loneliness. That means, as I already said, there are many institutions which have initiatives bringing older adults together or helping to prevent social isolation of older adults. And for those institutions, we are developing this toolkit, so to say, combining of analog and digital tools to stimulate facilitated storytelling. For this, we developed a very detailed business value proposition. Here you can see some of those facts, the pains and the gains, so to say, on the institution side. So to organize, for example, those events is very time consuming. It's a lot of preparation is needed. You even don't know how to do it. You are anxious about failing, and so on and so on. So we will bring instructions to interested institutions. We will give tips and tricks on facilitating those storytelling events, step-by-step structure, so to say. And this will also help those institutions to widen up their community. For example, museums will have the possibility to target another target group, so to say, within those kind of products. We also developed a very detailed user-centered flowchart. That means there is a very detailed workflow behind this, starting with the facilitators on the institution sides, for example, the curators of the museum or the leaders in the institutions are inviting to talk about a special topic. Then the events takes place. There the social inclusion happens because this is an event in a physical space. Then all those stories are collected in, this is the technical base, in a database. Then there are different methodologies to publish those stories and to bring those stories to the interested community. Well, I will now give you a very, very rough overview on the status quo of the technical development we are having so far. This is divided into 3 parts of the project. The first part is the so-called facilitator portal. That means this is addressing those people who organize those storytelling events. The second part will be the recording app, the mobile app for recording and structuring those stories. And the third part of the technical development will be the website, so to say, the homepage of the whole project. So I will start with the Facilitator Portal, which is used by, for example, the museum staff organizing Dutch storytelling event. There you have this intro page where you can add a new capsule. So the whole idea behind this is formulated in the metaphor of a capsule. So that means all those stories for one topic are collected within one of those capsules. And in these capsules, all the stories are collected, and you can give those capsules several rights, several specifications. So what can happen to these capsules, what should be happen to those capsules, and so on. So first of all, for example, if you're planning to do such a storytelling event at the garage in Moscow, you will set up a project where you can type in the project with a number. For example, here it is Corona in Amsterdam, but here you can say it's garage storytelling. Then you can set up a team, which is part of the whole process, and then you can define the different sessions which will take place during the whole storytelling process, so to say. You can add a team member for doing this, just a quick round, yeah, and then you can define those specifications of the capsules I just mentioned. So you can add some code lock. That means that you can have access to those collections within this capsule when you have this code, or you can add a location lock to these capsules. That means you can only open those capsules when you're on a specific place. For example, this is interesting, for example, for cities or for museums who have very specific things to show on a specific place. There you can do this with Google Maps and so on, or you can do some time lock on this capsule. That means you are able, for example, in the meaning of heritage, you are able to say this capsule can only be opened 10 years, in 10 years, for this, so to say, or on this date, for example. Yeah. So there are several possibilities to define the specifications of those collections, story collections within those capsules. Yes, then you can, within this portal, you can define your slides. I will go a little bit faster now. Then you can collect those stories which are recorded already. You can collect them within those capsules. There you can see the selected stories, for example. Yes, here you can see the facilitators who are part of this special storytelling event. And then you will start, for example, the first session using this Facilitator Portal. So you will not need to do your own screens, or you can do all those things within this portal. So what are we going to do? Then you can design your screens within this portal. How will our capsule look like with those specifications, for example? Then you can start the storytelling process, exploring the stories. You can give some homework to the older adults, for example, finding an object, and then you are planning the next session. As I already said, we do have not only digital tools, we also have analog tools. We do have leaflets, we do have flyers to stimulate that story telling process, because not everyone is able to tell his story in an appropriate way. So we are helping the people to tell their story in a way so that it is consumable for interested people. So we do have those cards here, which are giving some support in the whole storytelling process. Yes, there we can have a look on the mobile app and in those capsules. Then the second session will start. What are we going to do? Then please tell us some things about your object, for example. Then let's have a look in our capsule. Therefore, you can use a link or use the leaflet with a QR code on. Then you can see what's going on with the story. Add a story, for example, to our capsule. There is already one story. Then you can set here the specifications of this story collection, this capsule. For example, if it is only private, or if it can be seen by the storytelling team, for example, the community which was involved in the storytelling process, or if it's open to public, for example. Yeah, here you can see the progress of different capsules, so to say. So this is already finished. This is in the mid of the process, and so on. Then you can add and improve stories. For example, the third session, what are we going to do? What was the most inspiring stories? Because you have the possibility also to comment other stories. That means you can say this was a very good story, a very nice story, for example. You can react to other stories within your group, of course. Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, you can invite friends and family to have a look on your capsule, on your stories. And the fourth session, so to say, if you're planning in 4 sessions, you can have another look on your capsule. For example, this is our location, this is the time, this is the code. And then you can use the link or the QR code to get in the capsule. And then if you are satisfied with your collecting, you can publish this capsule to all those people you want to have access to this kind of capsules, so to say. And then this capsule is launched successfully on the website of the HaStory project. Okay, the next part of the technical solution, I will do it a little bit faster, is the recording app, which we do have developed already. So this is used within the storytelling process. It's a mobile app which you can use on the phone, but you can also use it on the desktop version, of course. So it's a PWA solution on a technical point of view. So you're logging in, then you can add a new story, like those ones. Then you can also set as react to those stories which are already in the capsule. Then you can see the published capsules and those who are in progress. You can add a new capsule. You can share this capsule. You can open this capsule, I already told you. Then you can send a link and invite those people who want to have access. For recording, it's rather simple because we are addressing older adults. So it's designed very simple, very accessible. So you only have to push this button to record your story. You all know this. If you are not satisfied with your story, you can retake it. Then you can continue. Then you can enter a title, and so on and so on. Here you can do the settings. You can add some pictures here to the stories. Yeah. There you can see the specifications of this specific story, the picture uploaded. Then you can download your recording or upload a new recording and so on. You can change it, you can save it, of course. This is the the account you will get if you are using the whole product. Then you have to sign an informed consent that this is okay for you, what will be happening with this capsule, and then you can publish the capsule, and then it is published. So this is the recording tool. And the third part of the technical development, I already said, it is the website, which is public, which is accessible, of course, to the public, and where we can see all those capsules, different capsules from all over the world, which have been published, but maybe they are with different type of specifications. You can see those specifications here, where it is accessible, when it is accessible, and to which community or to which people those capsules are accessible. Yes, here you can log in as a participant or as a facilitator. If you log in as a facilitator, you will come to the Facilitator Portal I showed to you at the beginning. Okay, so this is the collection of those capsules. This is a very, very rough overview because time is short on the technical development. What is important for me to say in the third part of my presentation is, I already mentioned it, that the whole process is a bottom-up process. It is still a bottom-up process. So we are, as I told you at the beginning, we are working on it. So we did qualitative interviews with potential facilitators, with customers, and of course, with older adults in all the 3 countries. We did those co-creation workshops with the older adults in the 3 countries. And of course, we are including all this feedback we are getting from future users and clients in the development, in the technical development, and in the development of the whole user flow, so to say. So, as I said, there is a very strong theoretical and empirical approach also behind this project. That means generally we are talking about the post-corona time, so to say. So the go-to-market is in May 22. Why I'm mentioning this is because there was a lot of discussion during the last year if we should change the whole paradigm of the project, which is bringing people together physically to tell their stories together. So we are not talking about that the older adults tell those stories alone at their home. Of course, they can do that, but this is not the approach of the project. The approach of the project is bringing the older adults together for telling those stories. And we decided not to change this paradigm because the go-to-market is in 1 year, and we are hoping that the pandemic is gone in 22. So, and the older adults will hopefully will be able to meet together in physical space in 1 year, in a year, so to say. So the digital in this project is a tool, so to say, and this is not the solution. So what we are aiming within this project is prevent social isolation, especially, so to say, aroused during the pandemic, using the digital technology. But the digital technology is not preventing social isolation per se, so to say. So this is very important for us within the paradigm of the whole project. So what we are trying to do, and this is what Maria already mentioned in her introduction of the project, is we are trying to widen the meaning of accessibility and inclusion, not only in a technical meaning. So the background, so to say, is in the fields of digital humanism. So when we are talking about heritage, oral history, when we are talking about archiving, and this is why we chose this capsule model, we have to keep in mind that we are talking about very humanistic topics, so to say. So that means within our project, we are trying that the older adults are contributing to society. So that the older adults are not be seen as supplicants, so to say. So they have to be seen as contributors to the society. They have many things to tell, and they won't contribute telling their stories. So that means one of our sentences within this project is sharing your stories of your heritage. Yeah? So and this is why we developed this capsule model, so to say. Yes. The digital humanism movement is a very interesting background for this kind of project. This is a rather new movement which started in 2019, 2018, 2019. And this is not to be confused with digital humanities. I'm pretty sure you all know about digital humanities, which is a very long tradition in the meantime. But digital humanities is rather about the scientific and the university approach, so to say, to improve or to use digital tools in humanistic disciplines like art history, for example, to use digital tools for analyzing paintings or for structuring different data to get some more information on an academic way, so to say. But the digital humanism movement is about the hierarchy between society and IT technology, so to say. So we are talking about the relationship between IT technology and society. And this is very interesting when we are talking about inclusion of older adults, because one of the sentences of this Vienna Manifesto of Digital Humanism, which is the basis for this movement, sounds: we have to shape technologies according to human values and needs, instead of allowing technologies to shape people. So this is very important for us, and this is why I'm talking about this bottom-up approach. So we are not using the technology because we can. We are using the technology in a way that it's serving our idea of getting people together. That's the idea behind this. So we are using the technology, we are shaping the technology, and we are trying to avoid the technology is shaping us. This is very important for us within this project. And a second sentence is, digital technology should be designed in such a way that they foster inclusion. So, and this is very interesting, especially for the topic of your whole very interesting conference, because many of digital tools do not foster inclusion, in our opinion. So many of those tools do it the other way around. Yeah, you get more isolated if you use digital technology in a way. And this is what we are trying to prevent within this project. So we are trying to foster inclusion using digital technology, and this is not that easy. So we are trying to avoid, for example, the digital divide between the younger and the older so to say. And this is the basis, this is the theoretical basis of the whole project. So the idea is to set up the whole process of storytelling and to use the digital technology to support the whole process of storytelling, to bring the older adults together in a physical space, to talk to each other and to share their stories together and to decide how to publish those stories and how to get access to those stories. Okay, this was a very, I have to look on the time. This was a very, very short overview over this project. So if you're interested, feel free to contact me under this email address. I will be back to you with all the information I have. And you can have also a look on it on highstory/story.eu, which is the temporary website of the project. Okay, thank you very much for having invited me and for this very interesting conference. Thank you.
Günther, thank you. Thank you for joining us here and presenting your subject here. We have no questions from the audience now, but I've got a short question to you. You said that this project is not at the end, it has not been finalized, and you are going to have a final launch in 2022. And this is a kind of a grassroots initiative. But I'm interested which user audience from those who took part in your tests and allowed you to evaluate the relevance of your project and how useful it is, and what kind of feedback did you receive?
Mm-hmm. Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, we did have some detailed evaluation with potential customers, and the feedback was very good. So all those people we talked about and all those institutions, all those foundations for the elderly, all those museums we talked about, they were very interested in using it, and they gave us also some very important critical feedback, what should be improved, what we should do better in the whole development process. And at the moment we are including all those feedback in the development, making the product as good as possible. And it's still in progress. So the next expert review, the next field trial is in May. So we will get some more feedback from our participants, and we are including all this feedback in the development at the moment. Yes.
Perfect. I got this question because, as far as I see it, not everybody is ready to share their stories. So what I'm interested in is the motivation of those who are ready to tell those stories. And that's why I'm asking you how you invite people to such trials, or do they have a personal motivation to begin with to share?
Well, the feedback we got from most of the older adults is that most of them do have a personal interest in telling a story. Yeah, but the problem is that many of them do not have access to an environment, to an organization, to a setup where they can do this. And the idea is that the facilitators within the institution, within the museums, within all those kind of care institutions will invite those people to get some storytelling events. And there, the older adults will have the possibility to talk about their stories within a given context, so to say. but of course, the older adults are also able to define their own topics they want to talk about. It's, yeah.
Thank you, Günther. You did answer my question, and I think that your experience in gathering feedback is something that we lack in Russia, because we have not had any projects of this kind. And possibly they don't emerge because many people believe that there is no motivation to tell stories among people. But your experience shows that there is enormous motivation. And I think we should use your project as an example to arrange something like that on our side. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very, very welcome to contribute. So I will be back to you if you are interested, and please be back to me. And thank you once again for having invited me.
Thank you. Now we're taking a short break, and we will be back in a few minutes with the next subject and the next speaker. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So we're happy to continue our program, and now we're going to discuss projects without which it is really hard to imagine successful cultural institutions today, and especially their inclusion programs. One of the most acute problems today for museums and for other public spaces is the fact that blind visitors do not have any opportunity of visiting the museum on their own. They need assistance either from museum employees or from their friends and family, but technologies are changing rapidly, and they help blind and visually impaired visitors to visit public spaces on their own. And we're going to discuss such a project today, and I'm very happy to introduce Janine Stanley from Era Technology, and she's going to talk more about their project Era. So Janine, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us, Maria, at your conference. This is a first for us presenting at this level, so we definitely appreciate the opportunity. IRA is a tech company actually that runs on people power. So we are a mix of technology and human services, and we provide visual interpreting services for people who are blind or have extremely low vision or who have difficulty interpreting visual situations. So this might mean someone who is overwhelmed by public spaces but wants to take part in activities. We do this through the use of a smartphone app, which is available on iOS or Android platforms, both. We are an English-only company at this point in time, and anyone with a phone number in the countries in which we're based can take advantage of the service. We are based in the United States, but we also offer service in Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand at this time. However, that service is going to be expanding probably in the next 6 months or so to include many other areas of the world. How does our service work? Well, our service works by downloading the smartphone app and using the back-facing camera of the app. As in, I have a smartphone here, using the back-facing camera as I point to the camera of the app. Our agents, we actually call them agents, they are visual interpreters, are able to look at the surroundings of the person and let them know what is around them, describe things, assist them in navigating, read things, assist in shopping. But for museum access, we do even more. Now, our agents being visual interpreters, the main difference between our agents and other programs that are out there is that our agents are actually paid, they are professionals, they undergo significant training in blindness skills and blindness adaptations. So they learn to voice things in a way that blind people can understand. They learn a lot about how to explain directions to someone, which is much more difficult than you would think. Many people will point and say, "It's over there." And the blind person has no idea what they're talking about. I myself am totally blind and have been for a number of years now, about half my life. But I was someone who had fairly standard vision before, but I had trouble reading. And so I remember the visual concepts. However, over there doesn't help me much. So I really appreciate having agents who are trained to interpret direction and be able to give me that information. As a lover of museums my entire life, I was very excited the first time that I worked with one of our agents to explore a museum live. Now, I will talk a bit later about how the pandemic has changed what we do, but we were founded in 2015. And in 2018, I believe, we signed on our first museum and also our first zoo slash aquarium or wildlife exhibit. And the first museums were the Smithsonian and all of their related museums in the Washington, D.C. area. That includes the Smithsonian Natural History Museum, the American History Museum, the Museum of Air and Space, the African American Museum, and I'm sure there's something else that I'm missing there. Those museums became what we call access locations. Our service is a paid subscription service, so people will pay for a certain number of minutes per month on the service. Well, when a property is an access location, it is actually free. The property will pay for the service. So the blind person can enjoy the accommodation whenever they need to, whenever they visit the property, or since the pandemic, whenever they explore online content from a museum. And this is very important because unfortunately, not everything that is online can be made 100% accessible. When it comes to a visit to a museum live, the blind person often goes along, and unless they have access to a special tour that may have tactile items that they can examine, they may not get much out of the museum. I know that I have had those experiences where I'm just walking along, listening to the tour guide or listening to my family describe things, but I really feel that I'm not getting the entire experience. With IRA, I can call an agent. I can have them look through my camera and give me my own personal description. So it's like having a personal assistant right there with me in the museum, looking at what I want to look at rather than what someone else may think I want to look at or know about. I can access that information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So anytime that I visit the museum live, I can have the agent with me giving those descriptions or helping me follow the tour group if that's something that I may need assistance with, or reading things, helping me in the gift shop. That's always an important part of a museum experience, at least for myself. And so this is definitely something that enriches the live museum experience. Since the pandemic started a year ago now, we have found that the use of our product has shifted from navigating places to actually exploring content online. And many blind people said, why would I want to visit an online museum? A lot of the content is not accessible. There are photographs without labels, there are videos with just music, there are 360-degree views, which are wonderful and intriguing and visually very engaging. But for a totally blind person, they are not at all accessible. And for someone with limited vision, they can be very confusing. Well, that's where we come in. We have been extremely pleased with the number of people who have been able to use our service along with a screen sharing program called Team Viewer. And I'm going to put the name of that program here in the chat, Team Viewer. And their website is teamviewer.com. And they will put that out to everyone on YouTube. This is currently the program that we use to screen share with one of our customers. This allows us to take control of their computer and we can have a better view of the monitor. Our agents connect with our customers through the smartphone app and also through the computer using a virtual private network. So security and privacy are very important to us. And we want to make sure that all of our transactions with our customers are very secure. And that includes our access customers like museums who are providing the service. So if someone wants to visit a museum, they will connect to our service and connect through TeamViewer, and then they'll go to the museum website and begin to explore what they want to find out about that museum, what content might be available. And this might include things that are already accessible, like a lot of text on the screen that explains exhibits. But having one of our agents there with them, they have the ability to look at pictures, to go off and do research about something they find at the museum. The agent can pull up Google searches and other searches to find more information. In 2020, we decided to start a program, and this was a bi-weekly program that we actually now do pretty much weekly to showcase museums with online content to show people how our services work. Our program is called Afternoon at the Museum, and it began as our response and our effort to educate people about some of the racial tension that went on in the United States in the summer of 2020. So we chose museums that were part of the Association of African American Museums. And these museums had some very engaging online content. And then in 2021, we broadened our scope to include access partners like the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. And this was our second museum where we actually had museum staff on the show with us as we explored the content of this aquarium, the many videos, the photos, etc. And for something like an aquarium, many blind people said, why would I want to visit an aquarium? I can't see the fish. I can't feel the fish. I don't know what these things look like. This would be boring. And I think we really had a good time in this video, in this show, explaining what a sea lion looks like or what a certain type of fish looks like and how it swims and how it moves through the water, etc. We expanded that to the San Diego Zoo for one of our recent programs. And one of the things that people love about zoos and animal exhibits is the live cam shots where you can actually watch the animals live. Well, for a blind person, unless the animal is making a lot of noise and the audio is available, there's really not much enrichment there. Well, here is how, and we can show the video here that I have this video clip from our recent show to the San Diego Zoo. What you will see is the video screen, which is what everyone is looking at, and it's the website of the San Diego Zoo. We will be looking at the Great Apes live cam, and our agent, Sierra, will be explaining what she sees to a group of us who are involved in our program. And this is how we will be exploring this content. And I will let you play our video.
Alrighty, so at the top of the screen, there is a banner, and you can see a young orangutan next to a baby black monkey and another black monkey. I'm not sure what type that one is.
Yeah, it's on the
or
screen.
ape, I guess.
Shall we
And
turn
then if
it
you
on?
scroll
Yeah.
down a
Yes,
little
yes,
bit, there
please.
is the ape cam.
And be sure we have
So
the
in the
audio
ape
so
cam,
we
I
can
can see a
hear
huge
Sierra's
orangutan on the left side of the
description.
screen, and then there's also a bunch of those black apes kind of mixed in with them. It looks like it might be chimps or bonobos, and maybe if you scroll down, it might say what type they are. Let's see. It just gives you the times. Learn more. Okay, so yeah, it's called they're called Siamangs, Siamangs. So they're orangutans and Siamangs. And then basically the enclosure is a very large kind of grassy space, and then there's like a kind of an obstacle course throughout the space. So there's a bunch of like logs to climb on, ropes, poles that are connected to the ropes. There's a Siamang right now who's kind of squatting and just grabbed something from the orangutan and ran away while he was holding on to some ropes. The Siamangs are much smaller than the orangutan. They've got really long arms. They're kind of like shiny black coats that are a little long, longer than you'd expect for a ape. And then let's see, kind of small heads, and their legs look a bit shorter than their arms. And the orangutan is probably one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. He's got a very wide face and a very wide body as well. He's got long reddish orange hair. The hair covers his whole body as well as his face. It looks like some of it's even a little dreaded up on his arms when he was moving. Looks like he might be eating something right now because he keeps lifting his hands to his mouth. And his skin on his face and his hands is kind of like a dark gray color.
Oh.
And right now I can see two Siamangs in the shot. One of them is kind of hanging from a pole while balancing on one of the ropes and kind of bothering the orangutan. It looks like he just tapped his head with his hand. And then the other Siamang's kind of minded his business off on the left side of the screen, just kind of picking through some grass.
Yeah.
And another one just ran in from the right side of the screen and went up to the orangutan. The orangutan is not amused with them today. It's kind of had an aggressive stance, and the Siamang went back away. Yeah, looks like these two are kind of picking on him a bit. He might have some food or something.
Yeah. I love it. It's very interactive live cam. And
yeah,
I had never heard of Siamangs before.
Me neither.
They look like they're fun, actually.
Yeah, so the one that was hassling the orangutan just walked off the right side of the camera out of the shot.
And that is an example of what it's like to explore content with one of our agents. We actually went to another website to find out what kind of noises orangutans and Siamangs make. And that was another fun part of the show. You can watch all of these afternoon at the museum shows on our YouTube channel. And I will also put that in the, oops. All right. We will put our YouTube address here in the notes. There we go. And our YouTube channel is youtube.com/AIRAIO. That's AIRAIO. And there you will find all of our afternoon at the museum shows. So you can actually look at different types of museums. Some of them, we actually have museum staff that we interview who point out different parts of the museum and photos that we may want described. Others have other types of content. We recently had staff from NASA talking about Mars exploration and showing us some videos and some different still photographs from Mars. We have a number of different types of cultural museums as well in that selection. So I would encourage you to browse those. Now, you have seen how this access works and what blind people can do with it, what we get out of it, which is a great deal, actually, especially when it comes to online content. What does this mean for you as a museum operator? What you will do is contact our access department, which is our sales department, and we will talk to you about the size of your museum, the online content that you have, the live experience that you have, and we will give you options for a yearly contract. And this way, it's not about buying a number of minutes that you hope people use. It's about subscribing to the service, making it available for anyone, pardon me, who may want to use it. And you might be surprised as museums begin to open back up after quarantine, social distancing, limited admission, things like this come into play. And for someone who's blind, social distancing can be very difficult because we don't always know how far away people are. And although we can often judge by sound, sometimes in big open spaces, that can be very misleading. And so having the agent to let me know there's someone ahead of you, you're getting closer, I think you're closer than 6 feet, you need to step back, or having that agent locate social distancing marks in line or at exhibits where people can stand so that they are 6 feet apart is extremely helpful in minimizing someone's anxiety because for a lot of us now, going out in public and maintaining that distance is very anxiety producing. People have been yelled at, for lack of a better word, by the public who don't understand. If you work with a guide dog, as I do, the dogs do not understand social distancing and they will often come closer than is acceptable to people. And so having the agent let me know where people are around me, how close they are, that really, makes my experience much less stressful when it comes to going out in public. And especially if I'm visiting a museum or an attraction where my attention is on the content, maybe not so much paying attention 100% to the people around me. I would very much like at this time to take questions from anyone who would like to know a little bit more about our service and how it's used in the museum context. And I could talk forever about our service, but I know that many of our customers, since we really publicize the option of how to explore museums have really been doing so during the pandemic. And they have been watching videos on YouTube that museums and other attractions are putting up with an agent so that they don't miss anything. Uh, this does not substitute for fully accessible content, but it can help when the content that you have, like a 360-degree view, is very difficult to make accessible with the standard means. And sometimes it's just more fun to explore online content, especially with someone who understands how to explain what is in the picture. And so people will use an IRA agent not only to help with accessibility, but also to have a friendly person who understands blindness and understands that the blind person may not always know what certain things look like and can give an explanation without judgment. And that's a large feature of our service, is that we have no preconceived notions, no judgments about people's abilities or what information they need. And I would very much like to take any questions if there are any.
Janine, thank you so much for your presentation. It seems that your project is really relevant, and we would really like to have something like that in Russia. As of yet, there are no questions from the YouTube audience, but I'd like to ask a question myself. When I learned about the IRA project first, I wondered, how important is it for the agent who works from within the application? How important is it for them to be a professional in audio description, to be trained in audio description? Because if the ARA application is used in a museum of art, then just simple description could not be enough. One has to have a certain skill in audio description, and people who work at this project, do they have those skills? Do they have this knowledge?
That is an excellent question. And audio description is a part of the training that we offer. We do not certify people in audio description, but we do give them the basics of the audio description experience, how to provide that description. And we also encourage them to do research if there's something regarding a museum of art, for example, or a piece of art that they're not sure about. They can go out and research that with the customer and provide some more visual information that may be more relevant to that piece of art, such as an article, an essay, something from the museum, a blog post, for example, about that particular art installation. And then they can go back to the works of art and point out where those things are, say in a painting or in a sculpture, etc. That the person may not be able to experience otherwise. The big difference between straight, pure audio description and visual interpreting is the interaction between the person receiving the information and the visual interpreter. So if a customer has questions and may say, well, I don't really understand uh, that shade of blue. Can you describe it to me, relating it to something else in life? Um, can you look up more information, or could you tell me how to spell that artist's name so that I could look them up later? This is the real difference between visual interpreting and audio description. But audio description is definitely at the root of what we do. And we have worked with Dr. Joel Snyder from the Audio Description Institute in the United States, and the Audio Description Project actually is the formal name. We have worked with him in designing our training, and we regularly consult with the Audio Description Project about how our agents are doing with their descriptive skills. In fact, we recently, after the United States inauguration, back in January, there was a show on television that night that aired for the entire country on all of the networks. And one of our agents provided extensive audio description for that show. He literally spoke for 90 minutes nonstop underneath the music and the dialogue and everything else that was going on with the program. And that really helped people get a better sense of the real scope of that particular program. We also provided a similar service for the inaugural ceremony, and we did so using a format, our actual official government channel, that had no other commentaries, so that nothing interpreting what was going on, including describing what kinds of masks people wore. So those are a few of the things that we do. But I do understand that when it comes to an art museum and interpreting the art, we really want to stay objective as an audio description professional would, and just give information about the art pieces and allow the person to form their own opinions about the artwork.
Thank you so much, Janine. I agree with you completely that audio description skills are necessary in this or other form, especially for description of artworks. And in our museum practice, we also strive to train all our guides who work with partially sighted and blind visitors who work with audio description and tactile models. One more question from me. Did I get it right that you're using only mobile phones, only mobile apps, or do you use any other devices? Because I know that similar projects and their creators that work in similar models also use glasses or any other gadget that is put onto the head of the user. That's another interesting way of doing it. Do you use anything like that?
We did. Currently, we only use smartphones. We did have smart glasses that were dedicated for our system. We designed them ourselves, and that became a very expensive proposition to keep them updated. And so we're looking for a commercial solution to allow for glasses again. Many of our customers feel that glasses are a much more natural way to move. You can move your head, especially if you have some remaining vision, or if you have had vision but no longer do. Moving your head is much more natural to look around than moving your phone back and forth. And that actually moving the phone, holding it, or having it in a device on your neck, on your body, that can be very difficult for people with other physical disabilities along with blindness. So we are looking at the commercial glasses that are available, also some small cameras. And we're also going to be updating our app very soon. And so we want to make sure that this whole system will be able to work together in an affordable solution that people can choose. So they have a number of choices for the way that they want to use a wearable device. But our glasses were very, very popular until the technology became too old and we were unable to update it. So we are big fans of glasses, and we will be going back to them, I'm sure, as soon as we find the right solution.
Thank you. I was wondering especially about exactly that, about the advantages or disadvantages of phones and glasses. And I see now that a phone is more economically affordable if the user already owns a gadget versus buying new glasses. But it's important that you told us about the advantages of glasses and that they can be used. And of course, not everyone can use conveniently a personal gadget like a phone as an assistive technology. Now, I see that there are no questions from the YouTube audience, and you gave absolutely complete answers to all my questions. And I think it's time now to thank you for participating in the conference. And we do hope that your experience and your story will inspire somebody on our side and Russian museums will use either your technology directly or create something similar and make our spaces more accessible for partially sighted and blind visitors. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today.
I see the links that you shared in the chat, and I have already reposted them on the YouTube chat. And
thank you.
Now I'd like to tell our listeners that we're having a 10 minutes break now, and then we'll have our next speaker with educational practice.
We are very happy to continue our program. And now we are switching to a different topic. We're going to discuss inclusion in education. Inclusive education is a very difficult topic. And when we talk about that, we very often eventually discuss how we can explain the same matters, the same things at the same time for children who have completely different learning capacities. So the question is how we can adapt the learning, the educational process for every student. These questions are very difficult, and the topic of inclusive education is wrapped up in all of these questions. And now I would like to discuss the project Find My Flow, which enables one to model one's own educational journey. This is a project which serves the goals of inclusive education, and I'm happy to pass the mic over to Alex Domanevskaya, co-founder of the project. Thank you very much. Hello. I will talk about Find My Flow now. What is Find My Flow? This is a platform for digital learning, which was designed for high school students. Find My Flow combines study skills, and it also includes technology learning. So we do not just learn the students how to use the system technologies. We learn the students apply the technologies to their learning, so to apply them in practice. Find My Flow was launched in 2018 by the team of 4 experts who work in DSA, Disabled Students Allowances. So an approach for students with disabilities. And I was part of that team of 4 of those who launched this project. As I said before, we designed it for students who study in the UK and who receive the subsidy because of their disability. The main goal of Find My Flow is to save the students time when they learn and to help them reach good results in their learning. So we want them to fulfill their potential to the maximum. Let us switch to slide number 4. Thank you very much. I will go through statistics about the education in the UK, if that's okay. So on the slide, you can see that 12% of all students, when they enter educational institutions, state that they have a certain type of disability. That means that they need support. Some of them need more support, some of them need less support, but still some kind of support should exist. The next slide, please. Around 60% of these students have hidden disability. As this slide shows, around a third of the students have skill Ds. What is that? That means some practical difficulties in learning or special differences in education. This is a more inclusive and more correct term. We think that they do not experience difficulties in learning. The thing is that they need different approaches, and some of the approaches may be suitable for certain students and may be ill-suited for other students. Among the matters that we touch upon here is dyslexia and dyspraxis, also mental health, including depression, anxiety. The students really need support, and very often they need individual approach to their learning. And here is how the UK state supports students with disability. They receive a grant for the technologies they may need. And they also have one-to-one time with their tutors, with their teachers. This is our background. This is where we came from. All the four of the founders of the project worked one-on-one with the students, and we know these methods. We know which method works best, how software can be used for learning purposes. And we can help students build their learning strategies with assistive technologies. The next slide, please. Sorry for my internet connection. It is poor for some reason. The next slide, please. Thank you very much. Assistive software. Find My Flow now includes around 30 different types of software, 30 different packages, and they can be split into different flows. So text to speech is the approach when the computer reads out the material, the texts to the students. And what is great about this technology is that students with dyslexia and the students who perceive the materials better by ear study better when they have this access to the necessary software. The next is audio to text. This is very good software for students with different types of disability. So by doing this, we can help remove barriers. Another issue that we managed to combat is dyspraxia. That means that students have difficulties in writing, or they feel unconfident when they start writing and they have a blank sheet in front of them. With the speech recognition technology, they can just tell part of the essay, and the computer will transform it to writing, and then students can finish this work easier. The next is notes. Many students with disabilities find difficulties in taking notes at the same time as they listen to lectures. It's hard for them to divide their attention. It's either they take notes or they listen to the lecturer. Another beautiful software is called mind mapping. These are mind maps. Again, the visual representation of information, which can be used for writing essays, for, again, different kinds of disability, and also planning and designing presentations. The same slide, the next slide, please. Thank you. Sorry, the previous one, please. Sorry. Let me share the screen still, although I was not allowed to do that. because otherwise I won't be able to show you the whole program, the whole software. This is what Find My Flow looks like. It is divided into 5 flows. We call them flows. These are different strategies. So every student attends lectures. Every student does reading and research work. Every student writes essays, reports, thesis. Revision is something that students need for their exams and presentations. So these are 5 flows that we support in Find My Flow. When we gathered information for Find My Flow, we were trying to present it in the most accessible format possible. So we thought that we needed to show the maximum of the necessary information, but not to overload the students at the same time, because the main thing for them is learning, is studying for their future profession. They don't have time to watch long videos and read a lot of text about how to learn. So Find My Flow follows the main principle, as simple as possible. All the videos we suggest are quite short. And to show the key points to the students and not to overload them with the text. This is essay writing. As you can see, it is split into a few quite simple and intuitive steps. Every one of them shows a certain step or a step one should take for writing an essay, academic style. This is a very short section, and you can see that every step is quite short. Again, we try not to overload the students. If the students like this step, they can star it, add it to their favorites dashboard. And when I go back to my dashboard, I can visit favorites. Favorites are the strategies that suit me most as a student, and which I decided to add to the favorites myself. So this is my personal flow, so to speak. So these are the assistive technologies that suit me most. These are strategies and methods of learning that work for me best of all. So these are the things I want to return in the course of my learning. I have a little bit of time left, so I will use this chance to share more features of our website. I would like to talk now about the reflective journal. What is reflection? Let us open this tab. It's a process that enables one to learn faster. It's used in healthcare now. So a reflection is basically us thinking about what went well, what we failed at, and what needs to be done the next time, what lessons can be learned from our experience to avoid the mistakes we made. This is what we suggest to students. We suggest we use the model which is used in healthcare. We made it a bit simpler. And we suggest that students put down their impressions about their studies, about their life, about any other tasks that they need to tackle every day. What is also good about Find My Flow? we have quite a lot of videos, and every video has a transcript, which is absolutely accessible. You can read it. And if I click on it, then the transcript will lead to that part of the video, which we highlight here. So if I stop sharing the screen with you, yeah, I'm done with Find My Flow. So these are the main features of Find My Flow. What comes next? In Find My Flow, we try to incorporate different theories of learning. Different people learn differently. So there is no single way of learning. Some people like to absorb information visually. Other people read and write and absorb information through those activities. Sometimes some students like more artistic work. They like to design a process, to make a presentation, to revise the information they get throughout the sources. And we try to incorporate all of these models of the theory of learning into our educational process, including reflection.
And while working with students, we often try to get lots of feedback. We're asking our students which videos were more useful, which software solutions are most convenient. We look at analytics as well. We're looking at heat maps of their cursor movements while using the website. And currently, we are looking at a new development that seems very interesting. Namely, we're going to rethink the presentation of the content so that students can find what they need more easily, because we understand that now we've got lots of content. I think that would be it from me. Besides Find My Flow, we're also working on a workplace platform that incorporates more strategies that are specific for workplaces. That's that. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Alexandra. Now I'm looking at our YouTube chat, and I see that there is a question from one of the viewers. There is dyslexia that involves different processing of sound. Such dyslexics have trouble interacting with spoken word as well. Have you got any assistive technologies for people with dyslexia and sound processing differences? Have you got any special fonts? No, we don't have any special fonts for now, but we are planning to include it so that each student can select a font that works for them. However, each spoken lecture can be downloaded as a transcript. If you use any additional assistive technology, you can use text help or any other solution that will highlight the written text as it is being spoken. To continue this question, can we upload our own fonts, for example, a dyslexia-oriented font, if it's not supported within the solution? Not yet, but we're working on this. We are going to incorporate at the next stage one of the special fonts designed for people with dyslexia. Currently, we have accessibility options that allow you to change the background using various lighter tones and change the sign of fonts. But currently we don't have any special typefaces installed. Thank you. And one more question from our YouTube audience. How expensive is a license for Find My Flow? And I can say that it's better to discuss it with our sales management. If you can forward the contact details of the listener to me, I will help them to keep in touch with our sales manager to learn more about our pricing. And I've got a question here. So your platform is not publicly accessible, it's not open, but one has to purchase a license to use. Yes, we're now trying to start new phases of work with charity organizations with public access for Bangladesh and Kenya, but this is just the start. And I think we can look at an option of supporting certain schools or institutions with free or discounted licenses. But I think this should better be discussed with our distributors. Thank you. I see that there are no more questions from the viewers, and neither have I. So I think we will not take up more of your time. I'd like to thank you for joining this conference. And I think that the tools that you showcased here can be used both for educational programs at cultural institutions and in regular educational programs. And I hope that this project would encourage and inspire somebody to develop accessible virtual spaces. Thank you for this invitation. It was a very pleasant experience to talk at this conference. Right, so dear listeners, very soon the last speaker for today will be coming here about applications for people with migration and forced relocation background. Thank you. We'll be back online. Sees that the broadcast has begun. We are going live. So, dear listeners, we are starting the final part of our agenda. One final presentation is ahead of us. We're talking about adaptation of people with a migration background, and the speakers are Hamid Ehrari and Daniel Neugebauer. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Daniel. Hamid, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, my name is Hamid Ehrari. I'm from Afghanistan and I've been living in Berlin, Germany since 2014.
Thank you very much, Hamid. Hamid is basically the main person of this presentation, as he will present on our app Arriving in Berlin. My name is Daniel Neugebauer. I'm the head of communications and cultural education at Haus der Kulturen der Welt in Berlin. And I am giving you a little bit of a broader context.
You mean this one?
Okay, we're having some technical difficulties, but we're gonna figure that out in a bit. Thank you very much for staying tuned. I know you have a busy and informative 3 days behind you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the vision, the mission of Haus der Kulturen der Welt, also about our history and why we did Arriving in Berlin. Hamid will tell you what Arriving in Berlin as an app from refugees for refugees actually did. Eventually, I will talk a little bit more about the philosophy of the digital that our house is busy with. And then in the end, I'm going to take you to my former employer, the Van Abbe Museum in the Netherlands, to show you another possibility of interaction between people in the Netherlands and in Afghanistan. So can I ask, is the first slide now visible? Because if you see the first slide, then you see basically the Haus der Kulturen der Welt in Berlin. We are a cultural institution dedicated to the research into the present day. That means we try to combine historical resources and new thinking to come up with new ideas and new alphabets to navigate the here and now. And of course, we also have a huge educational mission. We also feel very much indebted to history. We've got a very layered, difficult German history on the ground we are standing on. So let me wrap up this briefly so you can understand our approach a bit better. If you go to the second slide. So before this fancy building that you just said was erected in 1957, the area you see here was devoid of a cultural institution. You see the Spree River next to what is now Berlin Central Station. That's where we are right now. And what you see is a street called In den Zelten. In den Zelten is a place where people gathered in the late 19th century to plot against the monarchy and to start the rise of democracy in Germany. So we basically have a cradle of democracy here on this very ground. But if you go to the next slide, please. Of course, German history has very, very dark shades. And when the Nazis came to power, this area was used as a camp for forced labor for the Nazi railway companies. Also on the ground where we are right now was the Institute for Sexology and Sexuality Research by the world famous Magnus Hirschfeld. This institute was looted and destroyed by the Nazis. And you see here on this image, one of the Nazis taking a secret little peek into the probably erotic magazines and books that are going to be burned directly afterwards. Please go to the next slide. In 1957, on this ground that was heavily loaded, this building was erected. It was the area that then was the Cold War area. The Congress Hall, which is the Haus der Kulturen der Welt now, was a gift by the US Americans to West Berlin. The shape of the building was supposed to represent the freedom of the West towards the communist East. So it was built very close to the Berlin, to where the Berlin Wall was. And it was a counterpart to the Stalin Alley in the eastern part of the city. Next photo, please. So in 57, the Congress Hall was built. And in 1980, one found out that the promises of the freedom of the West built into architecture weren't quite lasting. So in 1980, the building collapsed and killed a journalist due to construction problems. Then the building had to be rebuilt. No, you can go to the next one. Thank you. The building had to be rebuilt. It took quite a long time, 7 years, until 87. And then when it was finished in 87, one realized Berlin doesn't need a Congress Hall anymore. It needs something different. So in 1989, in the year when the Berlin Wall was falling, the Haus der Kulturen der Welt was officially opened as a site for non-European arts. That was because in 1989, it was clear that the structure of the city had been changed and it was an international place and there was no place where non-European arts could be represented. This final photo also shows a little bit of a power difference or a new, not a power difference, but a new setup of power. On the left, you see the rounded shape of our building. And on the right, the white part, you see a new building. This new building is the new Kanzleramt, the Chancellor's office. So what you have to know is that now Angela Merkel is our closest neighbor. And whenever she goes on a tour with her helicopter, our cups in the cupboards are literally shaking and making noise. And I tell this to emphasize that our building is physically close to power, but also we are financed almost 100% by the German government, which is important to know. So whatever we do in terms of mediation, inclusion, speaks to politics. Next slide, please. Okay. This is a virtual tour into the HKW because we are talking about digital accessibility. I'm now showing you. Hamid, could you click on the virtual tour? Is that possible? So then you would see, yes, scroll down a little bit. Exactly. Yes, that's perfect. So this is how you could enter our building digitally. If you click on the arrows below, Hamid, yes. Once more. Oh yeah, now you're inside the building. Okay, we skip the entrance. And if you scroll a little bit around, Hamid, and move the image, you can actually completely access all panels of the Atlas memo sign by Abi Warburg. You can zoom in, you can get information on text, and you can get extra videos. We also added a tour and information in simplified language for more accessibility. So this is basically the standard of making cultural heritage accessible. And this is, of course, also something we do. But then we also try to do a little bit more and ask, what does accessibility, what does inclusion mean in our times, in a post-colonial time? And this is when the Arriving in Berlin app comes in. So Hamid, feel free to zoom out again and go back to the presentation. Because Hamid is now taking over to talk about this app. In 2015, the so-called Summer of Migration, the structure of Berlin once again changed significantly. And of course, our institution wanted to work with this. So for people, Farhat Ramazan Ali, Mohammad Yari, Al-Hadi Al-Debs and Hamid Erari were building an app that wasn't giving access to artworks, but provided access to a whole city. Please, Hamid, take over.
Thank you, Daniel. In 2015, as Daniel said, so many refugees has arrived in Germany, especially in Berlin, and there were so much problems. Many refugees didn't know to navigate through the city or like find out the official government buildings and others. So we came up with this idea with the, of course, with the Haus der Kultur und der Welt and financial of Berlin Mondiale. So we came up with this idea that first we said we will develop a digital map, but it will be on the internet, like on the website. We had it locations that only we know, our group of 4 people that we knew, our neighborhood. So we had it locations such as German classes and like LIF offices, Ausländerbehörde, where they go and start their Azul process and other stuff. And after that, then we thought it would be much better and easier if we have this map in different languages. So that's why we developed the map in 6 languages: English, German, Farsi, Arabic, Sorani, and French. So after when we launched the map online on the website, on our official website, one moment, I will show the slideshow. Sorry. So here, our entire team, then we decided to give every one of us at different tasks, and we went to the different part of the cities, discussed and spoke with the people, and ask them what is important for them, what was their problem when they arrived in Berlin. So most of them were saying they had the same problems like finding German classes and like German government, especially the doctors that could speak their language and etc. So we came out with this printout maps, which is it says House Leo neighborhood. This is like my neighborhood where I started like marking the whole locations and the spots on the map that was really important for us. For example, the Turkish, the Chinese shop, the hospital, like Gizo, supermarkets, and etc. That's how we started to brainstorm with other refugees and how we got all these locations on the map. And this is the picture from first day when we started to developing. This is our also a small team at House Leo. You see here is Farhad Ramazan Ali, then me, and Abdul Hadi, and two other our colleagues from House Leo, which we organized and developed this map together. And then we also organized many workshops with the Computer Center for Women in Berlin, where we also went there and described them the map and gave them a clone of our map digitally and told them that they can navigate and try to put on the map their own favorite spots and their own art. So it worked pretty well. We had so many feedbacks from them. Lots of women were really interested in it. Lots of them had it, so many informations. For example, we didn't have any doctors that were special for women, and they actually had this, give us this suggestion that we should have, because for them it was really difficult to find a women doctor, a specialist women doctor that could speak their language as well. But then unfortunately, because of the GDP, the new policy law that came into Europe, we had to then some reduces the doctors because of this privacy policy and rights. That's why we couldn't like put everything on the map, but we still have a lot of doctors and sites here. As you see here, we have like free public Wi-Fi where it shows you on the city where you can find free Wi-Fi's, public libraries, German classes, health, like doctors, counseling services, public authorities, police, health, and also in Arabic, and also like lawyers, culture and free time, and shopping and food. Yeah, that was all. Thank you. Daniel, do you want to take over?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Hamid. And thank you very much for working on this together with us. So what is interesting about this project, or what I like very much about this Arriving in Berlin app, is that it hints at a new form of institutionalism or new responsibilities that institutions can take over. As you see, it's not sharing knowledge on artworks or on German cultural heritage. This is a project about sharing resources more than access to art. The knowledge of the institution, the resources of the institutions can be used to do something cultural, namely to give people access to German culture in a broader sense and not through the lens of pre-selected artworks. And as you know, a lot of artworks, or let's say all artworks, inherently carry political meanings, political connotations, and so on. And very often these are colonial elements still present in artworks. So to present colonial artworks to refugees, to establish a base for communication seems wrong. This is why I prefer an approach like this, which starts from the very practical and defining culture much broader. Also, Haus der Kulturen der Welt, the house of the cultures of the world. We do not define the cultures of the world in terms of geography. We think more of intellectual cultures. We think of queer culture, we think of digital culture, we think of hybrid cultures. These are what we're trying to mix. And if you continue, Hamid, to the next slide and you click play, there's a little play button down on in the, maybe it doesn't have it, doesn't matter. Oh yes. I wanted you to enjoy this little movement. Das neue Alphabet, the new alphabet, is the program in Haus der Kulturen der Welt, in which we do think about what the digital mean actually. What is digital culture? What is the digital? And we're starting, of course, from the German philosopher Leibniz, who in the 18th century invented the binary code, the zeros and the ones that now define contemporary society. But we are less interested in the zeros and the ones, but what we're trying to ask is what happens in between 0 and 1? What are all the shades of gray in between the black and the white? Thank you. Das neue Alphabet is a long-term project. We are taking 3.5 to 4 years to fully delve into researching these digital means in music and archives and education. And luckily, as an institution, we do have the freedom to do so, therefore have established maybe a more complex setup of intersecting programs. Apart from the technologies that we're interested in, of course, we base everything on ideas on humanity. And an example for that is the photo you're seeing now. It's a photo of a hand with a tattoo. I myself do have a tattoo like this on my body as well, and it's an art piece by Human Rights Tattoo, a Dutch group that are tattooing the International Declaration of Human Rights on 6,773 people. So everybody gets 73 people. So everybody gets a letter, and then you've got a whole declaration run around the earth. When I say we're interested in alphabets, new alphabets, we're asking, is the binary code the most relevant alphabet of our times, or are there other alphabets? In our educational work, we are asking for body alphabets. Body alphabets or body language is the theoretical, can be theorized, or we're talking about corporal literacy. Corporal literacy is a new word that Bonaventure Ndikung, the artistic director of Savvy Contemporary in Berlin, has coined. He came up with this word corporal literacy, which means that the body has a lot of knowledge from former generation in it that can be activated as an archive through dance, through performance, through ritual. At the moment, I'm also talking to another scientist from Utrecht in the Netherlands. She's not researching on corporal literacy as a body archive or a system of signifiers, but corporeal literacy, which is looking at how does our body accept new ways of knowledge production. You all know all these literacies, digital literacy, media literacy, corporal literacy, so many literacies out there, and corporeal literacy asks how the body is being able to adapt to a new form of knowledge production. And this is basically what I'm interested in, and this is what my research is focusing on in the quest for intersectional education in museums that have to do with the body and with the diversity of bodies. Next image, please. Okay, because there's a lot to say about this. We also write a lot about this. We're trying to find out new alphabets by making books about new forms of alphabets. We're making 25 books I'm making 5 on corporal literacy or body-based education with an intersectional approach. Next slide, please. And apart from all this intellectual thinking about corporal literacy and corporeal literacy, of course, it is important in my educational work to bring it back, to bring it down to practical exercise. And what you see now is Denise. Denise is actually a physical figure, a figurine you could find in a shop window, which is dressed up in a way, so it is ambiguous in a couple of ways. This is a method by iPad, the Initiative for Intersectional Pedagogy in Berlin, which they use to teach teenagers from the age of 12 to deal with ambiguities and to speak about something they don't understand in a non-harmful and non-hateful way. So, theory and practice. And now we're coming to the hands. In this book, for instance, you will also find photographs of brown and black hands. These are photographs by Johanna Buray. Johanna Buray was a student who in 2015 needed to do a design assignment for university, and she needed to find an image of a hand for that. So she was Googling the word hand, and what she got was only white hands, hands with white skin. And she was shocked, and she called people from all over the globe to try their Google, but the algorithm was the same everywhere. When you put hand, you got a white hand. And if you put the term black hand, you got a pictogram of a black hand. But we all know it's difficult to break Google algorithms to really be on top of the search engines, but she tried anyway. She was making this story very public. She wrote press release, she formed a website, she asked people to reshare these images again and again and again, and a lot of media was picking up on this. So eventually she got a lot of brown and black hands into, let's say, the memory of Google to be accessed by more people. And yes, that was great, thank you very much. And that is basically a very similar approach in the digital world. It is an art project by the Dutch studio Moniker. And it is basically a little funny drawing exercise. Yeah, Hamid, you can dribble a little bit. Oh no, so the computer recognizes this as a wine bottle. The thing is, of course, it is called Do Not Draw Penis. And if it's called Do Not Draw Penis, then people feel challenged to draw penis. And if you go home, you probably see 10 or 20 of scribbled penises on walls. People seem to have an inherent urge to do it. And if you do the same here, if you try to draw a penis on this board, the algorithm will not let you do it. Then a big digital eraser will come and take it all away. And this is a direct commentary to Google. Just like we saw in the beginning when the Nazis were looting sexual content, today sexual content is filtered not by Nazis, but differently by big tech companies like, for instance, Google. Google launched its Quick Draw project in 2018. That meant they published 15 million drawings in 345 categories that were scribbles made to teach artificial intelligence what forms are. But among all these 345 categories, there was nothing sexual and everything was taken off. So it is a sort of censorship, or Google is forcing us to accept their moral guidelines. So we see this funny drawing piece also as a little bit of digital resistance. And of course, for this playful website to be able to recognize a penis, then it needs to be taught what a penis is. So the designers work with art students, and art students produced 25,000 scribbles of penises. Now the internet community worked on it. Now there's a data set of 250,000 penis scribbles, which can be downloaded and accessed freely, just like Google's Quick Draw project. This is what I like a lot. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So that was Studio Moniker in the Netherlands with this wonderful digital activation. And here in the end, I just wanted to bring you a current example. I'm standing at the HKW right now in my office, and next to me there's an exhibition finished, but we cannot open it due to the coronavirus. It's the exhibition Education Shock, which deals with the explosion of education all around the world after the shock that the release of the Sputnik has left throughout the educational communities throughout the world. And no, stay here just one more second, exactly. And our approach is not only to teach people about educational methods in the past, but what we want is to empower students to take control over their own surroundings. So we send artists into schools, into 8 Berlin schools, to work on the perception of their schools with students, to make suggestions for changes, but not only like cleaning up or having a differently designed interior, but thinking more in a political way. So this Bring on the Concrete is basically an affiche which we printed a couple of thousand times, and we're going to share this with politicians from the municipality that are responsible for planning new school buildings. And we try to make sure that when planning new schools and new school initiatives, the voices of the students that actually learn in these schools are being heard. And among all these clouds, there's this one cluster called 21st Century Now, where basically students are asking for tablets, better digital equipment. They say, please don't take our mobile telephones away. That is part of our life now. And we actually wish to have a school robot, which is interesting, and which brings me to the last point I want to show you today. Hamid, if you, yes. Here you've got, before you click the link, just a second, let me talk briefly about this. So now we're not in Berlin anymore. Now we're at my former employer, the Van Abel Museum in Eindhoven, where I was working as head of marketing, mediation, and fundraising. This museum had a mission of accessibility and a lot of experimental curiosity in terms of applying digital tools. So this museum bought the first museum robot in Europe in 2050, I think we did it. It cost back then around 20,000 euros, so probably it's a little bit cheaper by now. And what you see is my former colleagues, Shafiq and Malina, in conversation with this robot, and behind the screen, there are actually art students from Kabul. Shafiq, the man who is pointing with a lot of energy has come as a refugee from Afghanistan to Eindhoven in the 1990s. He is actually a painter, but works in security right now. So he wanted to do something artistic, and then he had contact with his art school in Kabul and was giving these free lessons to mostly female art students in Kabul via this wonderful robot. And this robot, therefore, for me, is really a beauty in intersectional approaches to digital learning. And as a final thing, I would like to show you a video of this robot in action. It might or might not have sound, but it's Dutch spoken with English subtitles. And you will see a little bit better what this robot can do.
Should I move a bit forward or just?
No, you can just play the whole video. So basically what you see here is a couple from Eindhoven that has been going to museums very often. The woman who now needs a wheelchair to move and has a speech impediment is actually trained as an artist herself, but now she cannot leave the house anymore and searches for access to view her favorite artworks in the museum. So with a little bit device from gaming or just with your arrow keys on the computer, you can steer this robot from your home. You can zoom into artworks so you can actually read the title cards. You can actually move around independently and have full control over your museum visit. We back then offered different opportunities, like you could either stroll around alone in the computer, or you can also book a tour and have a physical guide with you to bring you around. It's very easy, it's accessible, and this is actually a technology that was developed for CEOs of multinational companies to be able to be in big business and big money operations in all parts of the world at the same time. And we are adopting this technology in the use for people with disabilities, or as you see, people who are too far away to move the museum. And you see interaction between regular visitors and museum robots is active. If you want to watch the whole video with sound or some more videos about different inclusion programs of that museum, I think Garage posted a YouTube link into the chat. And that was it. I think you see, yes, how the robot is moving through the galleries. All you need is good and stable Wi-Fi and a little bit of courage. But the amount of freedom, liberty, and ability to autonomously visit a museum for people with disabilities is, of course, immense. So I'm a big fan of this robot too, and wanted to leave that as a last impression for you. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm still here, and Hamid too, if you have further questions for us.
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Hamid. I would like to ask you to share the link to this museum, to Van Abbe, again with us, so that we can repost it in the common chat. And I'd like to say that we haven't received any questions from the YouTube audience yet, but I've got a question on my own that is quite a complicated subject for us. We try to attract people with experience of migration, people with refugee background, and we know that there are quite few refugees in Russia, fewer than in Europe, because it's very hard to get the official refugee status in Russia. My question is, when Hamid told us about the application, he said that even very simple questions like where a gynecologist's office is or where to go for medical help is often unknown for a refugee. And for people coming to a new country, these basic things become very complicated. For those who have just arrived, it's hard to find information on how to fulfill basic needs, like healthcare, like finding a school for children, and so on, finding a job, how to protect their rights. All of this becomes very complicated. So we'd like to ask how to attract this audience to museums, because museums are not one of the basic needs for those people. And at least in Russia, it looks like that. We mostly have labor migrants, and they often work 6 days a week, and they don't have time for private leisure, and most of the weeks they spend at work. One day they do chores, they prepare food, prepare meals, and care for the family. What to do with these people if they don't have time?
Hamid, would you want to answer first?
Yeah, I mean, most of refugees, as you said, so they are not much interested in the museum or art, but there are other people like in the refugees. Most of them are interested. We just perhaps in the first 2-3 years we had no cultural site or no museums on our half. So then we decided that maybe we should have 1 or 2 museums. So we started to have with a Hakave. And actually, when people see what sorts of educate or what sorts of exhibitions there are in the museum, they will find their interest in it. Even though that they haven't been into the museum, they want to go there. They like to go. We just need to reach to them that there is this museum in this part of Berlin or in this part of Moscow that has exhibition about, let's just say, about the history, about like art, about colonialism art or education and anything. And they will come, those who are even not interested, they will appreciate and will participate and visit the museum. This is from my point of view, my experience that I had with the people.
Thank you very much. Yes, from my perspective, for the life of refugees and cultural institutions to be a match, one has to rethink what the institution should do or what the role of an institution is. If the role of the institution is mainly to fortify, to repeat the canon, what is known and what is believed about art and culture, then probably it will not be a good match. But if you have an openness to change the institution through the experience you gather from the refugees, then I think it can be a win-win situation. Mostly European institutions are pretty okay funded, so there's a little bit of money to share for projects that give people, well, something to do, a vision, maybe a chance to learn new skills, to settle here. And so for us, it was also important not just to have this one-off project, and we were extremely lucky that Hamid wanted to work with HKW longer than this project and was actually our colleague for a bit more than 1.5 years, I think. I like the practical approaches. In terms of philosophy, I am very much used to the idea of arte utile, or useful art, as Cuban artist Tania Bruguera put it into the discourse, where art is not defined as something to represent, where it's not about the canon or the white cube, where it's about a benefit, a social benefit, for people, especially for people who struggle. And therefore, starting with practical features like finding a gynecologist, finding a dentist who speaks Farsi, or using a discussion on art to learn a language can really help a lot. But as I said before, I would be very, very shy to put all the ballast of the European art canon on newcomers in Europe.
Yes, Daniel, thank you very much. We have more questions coming through YouTube. The question to the project arriving in Berlin from one of our audience members. Is it just an app, or this project also has a website, and is it available? Can we visit it?
Yes, we have a website also for it, and you can visit it like on the internet also. It's also an app. You can find it on iOS and Android as well.
It is maybe important to say, did you just say it, Hamid? The app, unfortunately, is not fully functional anymore, as it has been in the last years. And that is due to new regulations and new law on European data protection. So it couldn't match these laws. And since then, it's you can still, I think, see it and download it, but you cannot use all the features anymore.
Yes, Hamid, is that so? Yeah, the app is not fully accessible.
Yes, I mean, you can download it, as Daniel said. You can download it. You can just like click on the icons and see the descriptions and other information on it. But you cannot like use to navigate with it, like to make a route from your location to the destination you'd like. It's not that much functional now because of this European regulations and private privacy laws. But the website you can use, yes, the website, everything is available. It's also in the 6th language. You can use it in there, of course.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I have shared the link in the chat on YouTube too. And we have one more comment. I think that was to my question. Many migrants do not have access to smartphones, and those who just arrive and normally get stationary computers or get to use them in community centers. Is that right? So they don't have smartphones mostly.
I mean, in the first days, they might not have phone, not just all of them, but like most of them has a smartphones, and those who don't have, they have access to the computers in the refugee shelters, which they would also be able to use it. And most of the time, in like social workers in the refugee shelters, they would also recommend this to them. So that's why we also came up with the idea that where they can find like free Wi-Fi access, that they can use this with it, use the internet for it. And we also the app was before had the features that once you would download it, you could also use it offline. You could click on a category and the list would appear and shows every location of Wi-Fi's or whatever you need on your map.
Thank you very much, Hamid. We don't have any more questions on YouTube in our broadcast, and I have asked all the questions I have, and you have answered them beautifully. So I think that means that we can wrap up our 3-day conference. And I want to express my gratitude to you as well to all other speakers that took part in the conference throughout these 3 days. And another thank you to our simultaneous interpreters, our interpreters into the Russian Sign Language who have been working all 3 days. This conference was made possible because of the efforts of a lot of my colleagues at the Garage Museum. Thank you all. Please stay in touch. Please follow our program and hopefully see you in 1 year at the next conference. Thank you.